Welcome to Apache Cassandra Global Meetup. Aaron is my co-organizer. Aaron, would you like to say hi?
Hey everyone, I'm Aaron. How's that, huh? Yeah. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room too. But anyway.
Yes, so thank you for doing that. And we have a couple other co-hosts that can help potentially with muting people. Today, I'm going to be giving a presentation to primarily engineers. I mean, we can say Cassandra engineers, but it's just generally engineers. And it's for people who have not used Cursor with MCP specifically. But in this case, we're going to be using Cursor with MCP for Cassandra. And I'm excited because I get to share a little bit of something that I've learned along the way, but also because I get to use some open source contributions that other people have made in the community. And so that means it's easier for you. You can do exactly what I'm doing if you want to. I will warn you that it may be hard to follow along exactly as I'm doing it. All the tools are ready to go, but I'd say just wait for the recording, and I promise you, I will give you a document where you can copy and paste the stuff that I'm going to show you. In fact, I'll show you the link that I used to create the talk and the prompt that I used to create the talk. So you'll get everything. So don't worry about, that right now. Let's see, a little bit about me so that you can believe what I'm talking about. I've been in the Cassandra world for about 10 years. Really when Cassandra was becoming an important infrastructure technology for software companies. I was able to get into it right as enterprise search was one of my focus areas. I was fortunate to work with Cassandra, Spark, and Solar. That's because I was a Solar Lucene expert before that. So distributed, search across Solar Cloud, things like that. And so my world into Cassandra began 10 years ago, but it comes from having deep knowledge of search. Natural language processing is an aspect of search. I have deep knowledge of the machine learning and the AI needed to produce large language models because we were using the grandfather libraries back in 2014 and 2013 to really make search better. So what we have for now, I don't take it for granted. That technology has been around for a while. We now have the processing power to do it. What can we do today? Well, the AI, the LLM is so smart that, by the way, folks, if you hear a noise, it's somebody in the waiting room. And if you're a co-host, just admit them, please. That's what it means, just that somebody's there. Okay. Lost my train of thought for a second. Yeah, so today what I want to show you is a little bit about AI. So powerful. We can talk about so many things. Let's talk about the core. What do we need to get you up to speed so that you can understand what I'm going to be showing, right? So a couple of things. This is a diagram that I just embellished and improved today. And it's because I read an article, I read this PDF that I found on LinkedIn. Somebody shared it with me. I will share that in the Zoom chat. Wrong channel inside Zoom. I just want to send this to everyone. Meeting group chat. Okay. And so it's a really good 80 pages of how AWS says you should look at AI and agentic AI. Why would I trust it? Well, Claude, Anthropic Claude, you can host it on Anthropic Bedrock on AWS. And quite frankly, I feel like what AWS has done in the world of agentic AI, they've come up with frameworks. It's one of the best things to read on it, I would say. Just take a look at it. Anyways, I read this thing. There's a couple of pictures in here where I'm just trying to get to the picture that actually makes sense to take a look at in this context, which is, yeah, there's some folks in the waiting room. There we go. Here it is. So I should remember the page number, 24. AI, at the core, we're not, as normal human beings, going to be able to, maybe somebody's in this group is involved in training a large language model, okay? Or even fine-tuning one. Like, that's not an area that most mortals will be doing, because it's not needed. But what we do have the ability to do now is give an AI capabilities and broadly organized in these 5 categories. And I used to have 4 categories. I used to have 3 categories. I'm convinced otherwise by reading this paper that yeah, there's perception, I agree. There's action, I agree. What I was calling, something else, I will just say that I still call it memory, but they're calling learning. We can call it storage. And then there's cognitive, what I was calling like knowledge. It's really the way you think, goals, planning, decision, how to do the work. So we have, as human beings, the ability to improve an AI in these areas of capability, right? And the way that I broadly look at it, using that framework, is that an agent is essentially right here. It has a system prompt, okay? And the system prompt is something that you can make better than what most people do, but you can inscribe in a system prompt principles, practices, and patterns that you want it to remember every single time. Okay, you want the agent to do that every single time. And in Cursor, we would say those are Cursor rules, right? Or Claude preferences. But it prescribes specific domain knowledge. Then the agent is basically in a loop. And in that loop, if it has good perception, but it does not have a good knowledge, it doesn't really have good understanding. You have to have knowledge to understand something. You can look at a picture and not have any understanding of what the picture is unless you actually have, like a motherboard, right? If you're not a technical person, you have no idea what block is what. But if you are a technical person, you can look at the same picture of a motherboard and say, oh yeah, that's where the PCI bus is, right? So AI is like that. And AI has been trained on lots and lots and lots of public knowledge, which is amazing. But what I find is that there are niche areas in cognition, perception, memory. I'm calling memory. Let's say they call it learning, right? Or action, that you can improve how an AI agent works without being an ML engineer, without being an AI engineer. And up until maybe last November, the big thing was that an AI engineer, LLM engineer, right? They were so cool. They had knowledge of all these 90 frameworks. They could build a RAG bot and all these different things. All that stopped being cool because MCP servers came along. And so I'm just going to give a quick basic understanding of what MCP is. Just kind of keep all this kind of contextual. An MCP server, the crappiest explanation of this comes from, I think, Claude's blog, Anthropic's blog, is that you have an MCP server for your different things, and your MCP client could be anything. Could be ChatGPT now has MCP client, Claude has it, Cursor has it, and you just connect using this protocol. I think MCP is like TCP/IP. It's a protocol, and this is like my take on it. Is the MCP server collects your data sources, and it exposes capabilities in the very specifically, strongly typed terms, by the way, tools, resources, and prompts. And most of the MCP servers you use don't really have like a rich ecosystem of prompts in there, but it has the capabilities of doing it in the protocol. And a resource is read, and you can have dynamic resources, and you have tools that can take action, right? That's what an MCP server is. So what does it mean? How does that differentiate between like function calling? Like, what's the big deal, right? It's all function calling, right? Well, earlier, your crappy function calling system basically is going to be doing that work, and it only works with this particular LLM. Here, your MCP client is completely agnostic of the LLM, 100% agnostic. And it's a way that I say that you are exposing a menu to your AI of tools that allow it to do certain things. What does that menu include? That menu could include web services, databases, etc. But always comes down to tools, resources, and prompts. That's how these capabilities are kind of accessible. So I gave you all that information because if you didn't know what MCP was, you're like, what are you talking about? Now you understand what it is. Why is it a big deal? There are 6,000 different MCP servers available for various things. Like what? Well, here's an example where I don't necessarily even need to build anything if I want to build an MCP server. I just need to like compose it together. So there are, for example, browser use tools to control a browser. There's Llama Cloud, Llama Parse. The people that make Llama Index, they have their own, SaaS service. There's an MCP server that can help you access and use those services. Or for example, for files, Excel MCP server. It's an Excel MCP server that works with Excel files. Well, what's actually happening in the MCP server? Well, your instructions are getting turned into tool calls. So MCP is just a fancy way of saying we're making it easy for AI to discover tools. And so that's what MCP is. And you can use MCP in interactive systems. So you can have it in like Cursor or Claude, right? Or you can use it in an open source ChatGPT clone like Open Web UI via MCPO. That's a different topic. LibreChat, it's an open source clone of ChatGPT. You can connect different LLMs, and then you can connect your MCP servers, and basically you can do cool stuff. So, or you can use it inside an automation like Naden, where you connect your MCP server and you tell Naden to do something, and then Naden interprets it and then executes on it. So a lot of stuff, if you haven't seen it happen, it may be like, what are you talking about? So let's just look at it. I want this to be more hands-on than it is explanation, because I think when you see it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So sharing, I just moved over cursor to my primary screen. Can you all see that? Are you still seeing
No,
Figma?
we're looking at cursor.
Yes? Okay, see cursor. Okay, cool. All right. I'm gonna zoom in I can't zoom in too much because I also have to look at it. So but I have opened up cursor on a repository called EasyCast MCP. And originally what I was going to do, and I'll send you the link of EasyCast MCP. Where's the remake? It doesn't have it, but anyways, it's just called EasyCast MCP. It's by John Haddad. And I was going to just bring it up, a fresh repository, and I was going to make all these things, but he already has it. So why reinvent the wheel? And when you open up his repository, he does have a makefile. And if you're not familiar with a makefile is an ancient technology to basically script out certain things that need to be done. And it maintains dependencies. So like if something needs to happen and something else needs to happen before that, a makefile can be used for that. And so it's a fancy, it's a really, really easy, simple tool to do very, very complex things. Yeah, exactly. Makefile is ancient technology though, right? Like how it's like we used it back in for C projects, right? So makefile here is just saying, okay, and if I just run, I'm going to open up a new shell, and I'm just going to run make. It tells me what are the kind of targets that are available. So I can say make Docker build, make Docker push. I'm not going to push the repo. This is his repository, but I can also say run the MCP server locally, right? And it's all kind of here. So if you look at it, it says, here's how you run the MCP server. Okay. So I just did make Docker build, and I ran Docker compose up. And so let me just show you, I'm going to turn off everything. Okay. I'm going to turn off every single thing that I have running here. So I've got completely everything off, nothing on, right? And just note that I'm inside a container with cursor. And if I just go to terminal, it's a brand new repository except for a few changes. So you'll see what those are in a second. But there's really not a lot of changes here. Okay. I turned off the MCP server out here in the Docker Compose because I wanted to start it locally with Python instead of in the composition. But he has a really finely configured Cassandra service, which leverages small memory sizes, so you can actually run it on a container, right? So a lot of the stuff that John is an expert at is tuning stuff. So I'm like, I'll trust this guy. And then in the Docker file, this is his Docker file. I was trying to debug something, and the only line change I made is this, but it didn't fix it. So don't worry about this. Apart from this, really, apart from me commenting out the MCP server service, I have not changed anything. And the way he has it, if you copy the environment variable from the test to this, right? This environment variable set is used everywhere because it's a localized Cassandra instance. Right? So if I just say Docker compose up, let's say I don't know that. I can hit in cursor Control K, and this thing comes up here, and I can say bring up Docker compose. Right? And cursor just writes it for me. And I'm like, well, that you don't need it for that, but you know what I'm talking about. Like it basically can understand what I'm trying to do and just do it. So that's one. I just started the Cassandra service. And then I'm going to start something else over here. And I'm going to say make, I think it's make run, right? So that's going to run the Cassandra server. Oh, sorry, the MCP server. So that started here. And then looks like that is up and running. Okay, cool. And I now have a Cassandra MCP server that is talking to this Cassandra here, thanks to John's work. Now, how do I use it? Well, in Cursor, at least, you can have a repository level or project level, a folder level, whatever, folder called .cursor. And in here, I just have mcp.json. And, I just connected it to the URL that I got from here. Okay. Now, this is a MCP server that is accessible via the web. There are tons of MCP servers that only run locally. And so if you're a Windows user, okay, Cursor works well with Windows Subsystem for Linux because it'll be running different commands to run MCP servers. And so a lot of times you'll install an MCP server and you'll see, I'll have actually Cursor install a few. You'll install a few MCP servers and it will say npx or uvx or pipx or jbang is for Java ones. All those tools are going to run on Linux to download a package and run a little piece of code on your computer. So if it's an npx command to start the MCP server, that means it's a node package, right? So in this case, for example, what would be the package language for this code? Well, I think when he publishes it, you can use it as a Docker file, right? That's the beauty of it. You can just have a Dockerized MCP server. And so if you have Docker installed, as long as you run the Docker command properly, that MCP server can then be leveraged. But essentially, this is another MCP configuration to basically connect it to the Cassandra MCP server to say, run this UV command, here are the arguments, and here are the environment variables. So you can have an MCP server configuration that looks like this, because I'm using a remote MCP. Technically, it's not remote, it's local, but it's a server that's exposed using streamable HTTP. And MCP servers come in different flavors. They come with STDIO, meaning standard input-output, just on the computer. HTTP, and then server-side events apparently is going away with the newer protocols. So I've got my MCP servers configured inside Cursor here, and you can always find those by going to preferences, cursor settings. And let's say I'm going to turn this off, right? But if I wanted to add a new MCP server, it's showing me a different file because that's the file for my environment, for like my user. So I can have preferences for MCP servers that I use across every project. I don't want to mess with that, so I'm going to not do that. But I'm just going to go and edit this configuration, and so it goes directly to where it's coming from. So you can have an mcp.json here and another one in your home directory, and it will basically merge it. But you don't have to turn them all on. In fact, I would say don't turn them all on, because when your AI agent, in this case, Cursor, is using MCP servers, it's basically loading the tools and telling it what tools are available. So if you have a bunch of MCP servers, you're going to have like 50 tools. And when you have 50 tools, that's about the limit at which Cursor will be like, you should probably cut down a little bit. Opus can do 100 tools, but Opus is mad expensive. And that's a different conversation. But right now, I'm just using my Cursor subscription. I'm not really worried about token costs, but still, you don't want to have more than like 40 tools enabled at the same time. And you can also turn off different tools. So for example, I've now essentially secured this tool to only do a read of the key spaces. So in the conversation, if I say what tables are available, okay, hopefully it won't be able to access the tables, right? Because I have not given it the permission. So it says get key spaces. But unfortunately, it won't be able to do that. So I'm going to stop. But if I went ahead and enabled all of them, I got to go and enable. And I ask the same question again. Oh, let me start with a new chat. Usually you have to do a new chat. So turn it off, turn it on, do a new chat. Oops, I don't want to do that. Down. Show me what tables are available. All right, so it's going to do key spaces because it needs to know what key spaces are there. Now it's running get tables. And what you're seeing is it got all of that through the MCP server, because I am showing you the MCP server running. Right, this is the log or whatever, the console of the MCP server. So at the very basic level, I now don't need to like know CQLSH. And here's another thing. If I do want to go into CQLSH, but it's inside a Docker container, right? So what I'm going to say is I'm going to do Control K. Yeah, I know. Control K, and I'm going to say, go into the Cassandra dev bash and run CQLSH. And oops. Oh, am I running it? I think I am running it. Oh, I'll try this again. Say, go into the Cassandra dev container bash, run CQLSH. Boom. Right, so now I'm inside a Cassandra node. There's only one node here. It's running inside Docker. But I actually can do CQLSH if I want to, but I don't need to know everything. So I can just say, this is facetious. Right. But Obviously, that's not gonna work because it doesn't know SQL-SH. It kind of it assumes it does. So I'll say CQL show key spaces or CQL show databases, right? So it recognized that I'm now in CQL when I said CQL, and then it let me do what I needed to do. So it can be useful in SQL-SH. It can be useful in the bash, obviously, but then this is where the real richness is that, you know, the Cassandra MCP server that John made allows us the ability to examine and then refactor tables and then write code to move data between tables. All of that is possible because this MCP server gave a simple set of tools to an AI. So I'm going to pause for a second because there's a lot that I went over. And it is, you know, it's not worth it me continuing before I kind of like answer a few questions. Yep. Okay, cool. So basic cursor is based on what I just showed you. Now, one of the things that I'm learning is to use cursor and Claude together. I'm not going to cover Claude, but John has made his repository using Claude. And in Claude, he's defined a folder called agents, and he's got an agent in here. And I don't know if he wrote it or if he got it from somewhere, but looks like somebody, you know, looks like a standard. But essentially it's an agent that says, this is your document generator agent. This is how you need to create documentation. This is the test engineer agent. This is how you need to do it. So I've used subcommands and agents in Claude before, but this is John's code. So these are not mine. As I said, I added this cursor. So in cursor, there's different ways that you can put it. I'm not going to explore that today. I'm just going to share a vendor neutral suggestion, which is I will make a folder called .knowledge, where it's knowledge that is specifically relevant to my code, my project. And this is not limited to, by the way, source code. You can do this with folders, and those folders could have markdown files and PowerPoint documents. This is still relevant. So, and then I have a folder called manage. And I separate these two because for me, knowledge is the true and eternal, like what are the best practices that I want to think about, whereas manage or like an architecture that's true or has to be true, security things, and then manage is where I'm going to track a workflow of things that need to get done. So in my case, I will have potentially a roadmap in here, and then I'll have cursor help execute on the roadmap. I'll do a simple version of that. There's hierarchies of workflows you can clarify. But so one, I'll go here, I'll make framework.md. And I'm going to pull up my Notion notes because I do have this prepared. I'm going to send you the Notion notes so you guys can all have access to it as well. And I could connect my Notion to cursor, but I'm not because I'm resisting the temptation. Connect everything. Why? What's the reason? But here's an example, right? This is an MCP server. What would be relevant for this MCP server from a framework perspective? So one is, for example, at the systems level, right? I could say must be able to run in Docker standalone or in a composition, right? And it already does that, right? But that could be a requirement. So that's not a requirement, but I'll just say like our systems have to be able to run on this. Or on the database level, I could say, we'll say all queries, if generated outside of an ORM must be CQL queries, right? Because we're telling it like you're not an SQL agent, system basically. You have to tell the AI we're talking about Cassandra. So I'm just going to leave that as is, and you can always improve this, okay? By coming into this, and this is the part where I'm just like, this is unfair. I'll say expand. So I'm pasting, these 3-4 lines here, and I'm saying expand this into a framework architecture for easy CAS MCP. Look at all of the code, okay? And what I could do here is I could say, everything is auto, right? And it does that. Or I can say do max mode. And right now it's set to GPT-5. But I could say do sonnet, which is it's pretty good. Has a big window. And yeah, cool. And I could run this on my computer, or I can run it on a background agent. Okay. I'm going to just run it on my computer first, and I'll do another task in a background agent. And that background agent is what is basically a container running on a VM somewhere. I don't know whose it is, but I mean, it's provided by Cursor. So let's go ahead and hit send. And so documentation used to be so much work. Now with MCP, do we really need to document the schema if the MCP server can give us a live version of it? I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe we need to document the design principles. Maybe we need to document the change principles. How do we do data migration between tables? But beyond that, the AI is going to do the work. Why bother having to generate documents when we don't need it? So it's asking for the first time, so that's why I asked for my permission. It did a bunch of thinking. It read every single thing I guess it needed to. There's not a lot of files here, by the way. It's pretty simple. The code is very, very functional. It provides an MCP server to understand, the schema and structure of a Cassandra database. And I'll see what it documents. Okay, so it's already started writing it. Awesome. So this is what it generated for us, 300 lines. Where if I, wanted to say, I really like the way John is writing code. I really like the way he's designed his architecture. Basically, it looked at all of that code that I had not looked at, honestly. I knew that it worked because I tried it out, but I did not write any of this code. And it explains this code. It documents it. It is making diagrams of how it works. And now I can go and edit this document. And then going forward, I can say, always look at this framework document to make sure that the conventions we talk about are being followed. Now, frankly, 300 lines is a bit too much. I wouldn't be wanting every single knowledge reference to go look at these 300 lines. So maybe what I'll do is I'll separate it out into different files, right? I could have interface software database system files, and I can make that contextual knowledge to leverage in different ways. So you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say refactor this framework.md. Well, you can also do at. So at files, so we'll say it's .knowledge framework. So this convention of at and .knowledge, or my folder name is .knowledge, but the at convention is the same in Claude, by the way. That's how you would reference it. So to refactor this file into 4 smaller relevant, I'll say 2 or 3 relevant architecture documents. Keep it simple. Sometimes you have to say keep it simple. Once it does this basic knowledge management task, I'm going to go back to the engineering side, and I'm going to essentially create a API on top of Cassandra, and I will have to create a table, and I'll have to create code to talk to that table. And then once that API is created, I will, want to have some unit tests. So I'm just thinking it out loud right now. Anything else we wanted to do with this API? What should the API do? We can talk about it. We're staring at a screen while the robots are doing work right now, so we might as well chat. Come on. Obi, what should we make the API for? Maybe he's force muted. Let's see. I could also be disconnected and just talking to myself, so.
No, it's still here. I'm here just thinking.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
I'm here. I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay. It's okay. No, thinking is good. We let the robots think. We should also do some thinking, right? So it's made a bunch of files. It made one for deployment regarding Docker. It made one for that even tells you how to run on Kubernetes. Not that we're going to do that. And there's a system architecture about how things are built. And then you have a framework. I think this document will be reduced in size. Is it? Yeah. So it's a lot smaller, right? So the framework document is a lot smaller, and it is now referring to the system architecture and the deployment tools. So they're automatically it's doing the job that I don't want to do. So now let's make a roadmap. And normally I would make the roadmap actually in Claude Pro or ChatGPT with deep thinking, but we don't have time for that, so we're not gonna do that today. That takes like 25 minutes. So, and then I'm gonna have in here a thing called issues. And that's all we're gonna do. We're gonna do a roadmap and we're gonna do issues. And so in the roadmap, what I'll say is, yeah, so what I like about Cursor is that you can just find it by just typing the name of the file, and it just finds the right path for you. So there we go. So look in the roadmap, create a roadmap for a simple API to run on, oh, so simple API, number 1. Okay, that's the goal. It will use the local Cassandra cluster inside the Docker compose. So I'm going to give it this information, right? It's called Cassandra dev, right? It's going to be let's say fast API, because I like fast API. And then the API needs to be able to track links that are being scraped from a WhatsApp group, because I actually need to solve this problem, to curate knowledge for a knowledge base. Okay. With permission, obviously, we have to ask for people's permission. And so I don't know what the schema needs to do. Do you wireframe all of this? Yes. So yes, I do wireframe. And in this case, because we're looking at data, we're not really necessarily wireframing. And I would, if it's a more complicated like data process, we would do a flow diagram. So that would be the kind of use of the tool, basically, the visualization of it. So da, 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 da. Okay, so I'm just gonna say create a roadmap, and then I have a specific requirement. So I'll say it must have interface, software, database, and systems, the following sections. Okay. And it's just a standard that I use, and so we'll just see what happens with this roadmap. And while it's doing that, I'll just start on issues here, just to say the way that I'm going to give the instructions to the AI after it builds the original, the first version of the API is that I'm not going to chat with it with cursor anymore. I'm going to actually just write issues in here, and I'm going to say solve these issues for me. And the reason is that that's the future. You don't even have to manage the issues in a Markdown file. You could connect it to a GitHub Issues MCP server and say, work on this issue for me. And because the documentation of the issue, if it's good, and you have all the source code, and you can connect to the Cassandra MCP server to get the schema, literally you can have the agent do the work for you and solve the issue for you, right? So even this chatting with cursor, I think it's, it's going to go away. We're just going to say, do it, and then go away, and a team of software agents will have done the work. So it's doing this roadmap, and it's saying it's going to take 5 weeks, which is obviously not true. It's not going to take that at all. So what I'm going to say is, so it said there's link management, group management, knowledge-based curation. This is the data model. Let's keep it. It looks fine. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So it will use basically and it basically made a plan like how to run it. And since it has helped me write this, right, it's following my conventions. It's using Fast API. It's using Docker. It's using all the stuff that I've been talking to it about. It knows me because I've been talking to it about these things. And now what I'll say is, and by the way, I'm not afraid of anything this thing's gonna do because it's not happening on my computer. It's happening on a container out in the cloud somewhere, right? So just be mindful when you use cursor the way that I'm using it, I let it do whatever, right? I just say, just do whatever you need to do. If it's your computer, make a VM or open up a Docker container, go inside there, and then, you can SSH inside a Docker container with cursor. So let's say, and I'm going to make a new chat, which is healthy practice. Otherwise, you'll notice something. It says 11K of 600 tokens. That means at some point that when the conversation becomes too big, it starts to compact, just like in Cassandra, it starts to compact the messages. So it's just make a new chat. And we'll say here is create it. And then we have to spend some time, again, watching the robot do work. So what is it doing? It is currently grokking the document it made, and it's making a to-do list that it has to create. And because we have a Cassandra MCP server, it should understand what's there. And as it does the work, it should be able to verify if it created a table. It should verify if there's data in there, things like that. But let's see. Well, I don't know if it can verify data, but definitely the schema can verify. Now, it's a type of thing that technically I could also just say, go run it inside an agent. So this is relatively new in Cursor. There's a thing called agents. And essentially, right now, this is happening on my computer, right? This was a previous thing that had worked before. But I can run a background agent right here. And it will run in the background, whatever task I give it. So if I don't even want to worry about it on my computer, I can just say run it in the background. I can close my computer, go for a drive, and then wherever I go, I can just say, oh, well, let me go check what's happening with my background agent in here. I'm not gonna do that right now, but yeah, it's possible. So it's writing code. And it's doing it inside probably this new folder it made. Yeah. So it's making this completely new set of code here, and it's going to take time. And I'm not going to make you all wait for that. If it does finish in the next 2-3 minutes, we can insert data, do things like that. But I think I've met my goal of explaining what MCP was, showing how to use Cassandra with Cassandra MCP server. Thanks to John's code, we can really get quick up and running really quickly. And then we looked at cursor specifically today, although in a future session, maybe we can look at Claude. Hopefully this was useful to you. Any questions from the group here? Okay.
Do you think this is the MCP server useful for doing stuff like Cassandra maintenance?
Hold on, I'm gonna increase the volume. I could barely hear you. Could you repeat that again?
Do you think it's useful more for like managing a Cassandra cluster or for working with one? Like
Oh, in
setting
this
up your
one,
schemas,
I
tables,
gotcha.
and stuff, or
Yeah.
versus, you know, bringing up new nodes, monitoring nodes in existence, that sort of thing.
So I think over time, maybe, you know, he will probably add to it, but look, like you see right here, it can give not just, you know, just data, but like how to optimize it, table optimizations, configuration management. Yeah, I think it's both. Could you need less automation using Opus 4.1? Can you clarify that question, Kevin?
Are you using everything based off Sonnet right now?
Right now it's Sonnet. Yeah, in
Yeah.
this case, it's Sonnet, correct. Mhm.
Yeah, I found much better results using Opus. I use it for visualizations like Python.
Yeah, yeah. Opus 4.1, just to give you guys an idea, per million tokens of like input and output together is around $200. GPT-5, it's like $10. And Sonnet is like, I think like 50 or something like that, right? So we use it. We don't know what it actually costs when we use it through the subscription, but like it's good. But is it that good? I don't know. So, but I agree, it is good. I mean, it does a damn good job. You think the reference code, the 300, you could make its own MCP server? Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I've made MCP servers with one prompt, so I know it's true. I think the steps are important. You say, look at the code, you know, make a roadmap, then execute it. I think it works better that way. Yeah. So it has this huge list. It's still kind of going through it. Implement business logic for, so I didn't even expect it to do this, but it's working on the WhatsApp aspect of it as well. I don't even have that. So it's working extra hard for me. I didn't expect it to do all of that, but you know, I'm not afraid of going into a code now because it will help me understand it better. And as long as I'm not paying for tokens, you know, it's pretty good. One of the Cassandra committers, you know, in PMC, you know, Jonathan Ellison, he was a CTO, he was CTO of DataStax. He has a product called Brock, which, you know, has specific actions for code refactoring, which I haven't used, but he has really good articles about models, costing of models, and he's just recently produced a paper or an article about comparing Opus against Sonnet against Gemini. And Opus, like if you look at it on the chart, it's like it skews the chart like a lot. So. All right, so I'm not gonna make everybody wait for this. Hopefully this was useful to you. If you are interested, you know, in this type of stuff, we have a community. It's a WhatsApp community where we talk about data and DevOps related to AI. And obviously there's a Cassandra Slack group that you should get on top of. Maybe we should have a Cassandra and AI Slack group, I don't know, inside Apache. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming. And this will go onto YouTube at some point and we'll send out emails to everybody. Thank you.